And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Warning Track. Brett Quintine, Matt Mankiewicz, and you know what? It's Friday, and we love talking baseball. This is a very special Friday because it is very simply Jackie Robinson Day. It was on this day back in 1947 that Jackie Robinson crossed the color barrier. He played Major League Baseball for the first time, and the game has obviously changed a lot since then. He won Rookie of the Year that year with a .297 batting average. But you know what, Mank? On this night, there's going to be a lot of number 42s all around the diamond.
And including the only player who can wear number 42 every day. That is Mariano Rivera.
Absolutely.
He, of course, with the grandfather clause. Mo Vaughn was one of those players who kept number 42 till the end of his career. But now everybody on the Yankees who will play the Rangers tonight in Yankee Stadium, they all get to be Jackie Robinson and Mariano Rivera.
A six-time All-Star that Jackie Robinson was over the course of his career. A marvelous career, a Hall of Famer. He's a guy who did wonderful things on the field. He helped the Brooklyn Dodgers win their lone World Championship. And you know what? A lot of people don't necessarily talk about it, but over the course of his career, a lot of guys emulated him.
Oh, absolutely. Not only as far as his own personal conduct was concerned, but his style of play. He brought life to a game that was really in the doldrums coming out of World War II. 20 stolen bases would get you a league lead at one point.
That's true.
It had come a long way since the dead ball era. Everybody was swinging for the fences. Nobody was playing station to station, and he just provided the spark Brooklyn desperately needed. Talked to Buck O'Neill about 10 years ago about this very subject, and he said that Branch Rickey's motivation wasn't just to have a social impact, but also because the Dodgers desperately needed him. They needed his style of play. And you know what? Got into a World Series that very year.
And indeed, the Dodgers, they truly were one of the three New York teams. Obviously, you had the New York Yankees, the New York Giants, but the Brooklyn Dodgers, the wait till next year, how about them bums, the whole 9 yards. This was a team that I can't say was built around Jackie Robinson, but along with he and Duke Snyder, they put together some high caliber teams and they helped dominate the National League. Year after year, it was either them or the New York Giants. And you know what? In the end, a lot of people remember the Brooklyn Dodgers, and Jackie Robinson's name is synonymous with that ball club. And I think it's fantastic that they honor him. He is the only player to really have his uniform retired, obviously, by every ball club. And it's a terrific thing, Mank.
Absolutely. The one important thing that we have to consider is that his impact was not just on baseball, not just on sports. It started the ball rolling. Now, you can look back and say his service in World War II as an Army officer was something that led up to this. Branch Rickey wasn't just looking for a player. Rickey was looking for a man, and he was looking for the right man to do the job that he set out to do, and Jackie Robinson was it. Jackie Robinson knew that he was going to have to put up with a lot of abuse his first couple of years in the major leagues, and he did. But he, who even by his own admission had a pretty quick temper, was definitely the type of guy who was able to hold it in. And later on, that wasn't necessarily the case. When he became firmly established in the major leagues, he let people have it. He didn't take anything from anybody. And to the extent where in his final year, the Dodgers wanted to trade him to the Giants. And he said, no, I'm going to retire. That's it. I'm done. I'm not playing for the Giants.
We could talk about Jackie Robinson all day long, all year long, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about this special day because, as we mentioned, all the teams, everybody will be wearing number 42. But last week we mentioned that we may have the honor of speaking to a pre- and post-game radio broadcaster. That's Robert Ford of the Kansas City Royals. Robert, welcome to the Warning Track.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We know you definitely have some time constraints, so we're not going to keep you long. You guys are playing well. You've got a share of first place of the American League Central, albeit very early. Talk a little bit about what's been making that team click over the first 2 weeks of the season.
Well, what's been most impressive about this team has been the bullpen. I mean, this is bullpen. It has 4 rookies in it. Jeremy Jeffers, who got some Major League time with the Brewers last year that the Royals got before this season in the big Zach Greinke trade. Also, 3 guys, and Tim Collins, Nate Adcock, and Aaron Crow, who had never thrown a pitch in a Major League game before this year. Adcock, the Rule 5 guy from the Pirates organization. Crow was the Royals' first-round pick a couple of years ago, and Tim Collins, the Royals picked up in a trade during last season from the Braves. Traded it sent Kyle Thornburg and Rick Ankiel's at Atlanta at the deadline, and Collins was one of the guys that got in that deal. And all those guys have pitched well. I mean, it's pretty amazing to have 4 rookies in your bullpen and to have all 4 of them pitching well. I mean, between the 4 of them, they've only given up 1 run thus far. And I mean, you can't ask for much better than that. So the bullpen's been the most impressive thing about this team. Also, on offense, what's been a big key is Alex Gordon has been playing well. I mean, Royals fans have been waiting for a long time to see Alex Gordon have a productive season. I mean, this is a guy who was seen as a can't-miss prospect, grew up following the Royals on basketball at the University of Nebraska, and had a great minor league season his first year of professional baseball. And so he's having a very good year as well, and that's made a difference with the offense. Also, the only real concern right now is the starting pitching because, I mean, Bruce Chin with a very good outing last night, went 8 innings, but for the most part, the starters have not gone deep into games. And no matter how good your bullpen is, if your starters can't go deep into games and give you at least 6 innings every night, then you're going to have a tough time winning games down the stretch when your bullpen starts to get overworked.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting mix. I'm just looking at tonight's starting lineup, for example, against Seattle. You have guys like Melky Cabrera, who we know very well here in New York as a former Yankee, Jeff Francoeur, former Met, Matt Trainer from the Marlins, and you see a lot of veterans mixing in with the young guys. Now, is this part of the master plan as far as the development of the team is concerned? These guys obviously are holding places. These guys are giving you guys a lot of experience, but is this where they're going long term?
Well, I think long-term, the goal of Royals General Manager Dayton Moore is to have a team that's mostly homegrown, that's mostly young players. I mean, anybody who follows baseball knows about the budgetary constraints that teams like the Kansas City Royals have, so you can't go out there and look to make a splash in the free agent market every year to fill holes. So you have to fill holes from within, and that's been a real big focus for this team to be able to build their farm system to the point where they're able to do that, and they're close to being able to do that. This year, Mike Moustakas, who was the first-round pick in 2007, Eric Haas, who was a first-round pick in 2008, both should get to the major leagues. Moustakas, a power-hitting third baseman. Eric Hosmer, an extremely good hitter at first base, and a guy who will hit for power, but he's a guy who could potentially be a contender for a batting title every year. That's how good his bat is. And they both got Major League invite to spring training, and Hosmer performed really well. Moustakas had a very good camp as well. Those 3 guys are going to be here. That's really the plan. That's kind of the start of the wave. There also are some very good young starting pitching. I mean, the Royals have as much pitching in the organization as any team has ever had. I mean, and I've heard that from several scouts who've been around for quite some time, and not just people within the Royals organization. So, I mean, the plan coming into this year was the veterans that you get, don't get anybody who's going to get a multiple-year contract. Both Francoeur and Cabrera were signed them 1-year deals with the idea that you don't want to have all these veterans here blocking young guys who you want to play and who you want to see what they can do at the major league level.
2 guys who are not necessarily impact players, but are on that Royals roster who could see increased time over the course of the season and play some key roles, Jared Dyson and Mitch Meyer. Tell us what those guys bring to the table.
Well, they're both guys who can play all 3 outfield positions, especially Meyer. He's come up mostly as a center fielder. Dyson's a really exciting player on the base paths. Royals have used him quite a bit this year as a pinch runner. I mean, one of the guys in Major League Baseball. And not only is he fast, but he has an idea of what to do on the base pass. He has an idea when to get good jumps. He has an idea of what good base running is. And so that certainly makes a difference. So Dyson is real fun to watch out on the base pass. As a hitter, he struggles to make consistent contact. He has enough pop to keep the outfield honest, but he struggled to make consistent contact, but not really getting a whole lot of playing time right now. He's also a little older for a prospect. He's going to be 27 later this year. And missed some
That is
time
old
with
for a
injuries
prospect,
earlier in
yes.
his career, so his path has been delayed a little bit. Meanwhile, Mitch Meyer, I mean, he's a guy, he's just consistent. He's a left-handed hitter who hits left-handed pitching pretty well. He does very well defensively in the outfield. I mean, he's a good fourth outfield option. And, I mean, he's a fourth outfielder in Kansas City. I think he could be a fourth outfielder really on any team. I think there are a lot of teams that would love to have a guy like Mitch Meyer coming off their bench.
I wanted to ask you about Frank White. Of course, we're very familiar with Frank White in the Royals' glory years in the late 70s and into the 80s. He will be recognized before tonight's game for receiving the Jackie Robinson Legacy Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, which is based in Kansas City. Tell us a little bit what's going to be going on then.
Well, Frank, I know they had a little luncheon earlier today. I actually spoke to Frank White a little earlier. Frank, I consider Frank a good friend. He actually does quite a bit of work on our radio station, and he's also one of the television broadcasters for the Royals broadcast on Fox Sports Kansas City. And I know it's an honor that means a lot to him. Jackie Robinson is someone that Frank White considers a hero. And, I mean, Frank understands that if it weren't for Jackie Robinson, he might not have gotten some of the opportunities that he got because of baseball. And Frank is one of the nicest gentlemen you'd ever want to meet. And it certainly is a well-deserved honor for him. And I know he's very excited about the ceremony tonight, even though the weather isn't all that great right now. It's raining right now in Kansas City, but I know he's really excited to get this honor.
You talked about Frank White and the work he's been doing with the Royals recently. What about the legacy players from those years? I know some teams maintain good relationships with them. We're not in Kansas City, so we don't know day to day. But how tight have a lot of these guys been with the organization in recent years?
Oh, I mean, quite a bit. And, I mean, George Brett has the vice president title with the team. He's around quite a bit. And a lot of the, what's really impressive is a lot of the players from those great Royals teams actually stayed in Kansas City. John Mayberry, who, of course, his son, John Mayberry Jr., has got some Major League time. He's in the area. He's around quite a bit. The Royals have reached out to Willie Aikens, who was a first baseman on that 1980 Royals team and had drug problems and wound up doing prison time and got out of prison a few years ago and has turned his life around. The Royals actually reached out to him, and he's an instructor at their spring training facility in Surprise, Arizona. They have him working with the rookie ball kids, and they've had him a lot more involved. I mentioned Frank White, Paul Splitterorf, who's the Royals' all-time winningest left-handed pitcher. He's part of the television broadcast crew as well, and he's around a lot. Jeff Montgomery wasn't necessarily part of one of the glory teams, the glory years, but, I mean, he was a very good Royals closer. He's around quite a bit. So quite a few of these Royals players who are on those great teams are still around quite a bit and still very active. I think, though, that one thing that the Royals want to do, and it is kind of interesting because they had that success in the 70s and early to mid 80s, and then since then they really haven't had a whole lot of success. So it's like whenever the Royals want to reach into their past, they reach back to 1985 or
Right.
those teams from that era. And I think the hope is that with some of the guys that they're developing now, that there won't be a 20-year period where you really don't have all these great players that fans in Kansas City think back about real fondly, or teams that fans in Kansas City think about really fondly. And I think the hope is that they can develop that next generation. And, who knows, maybe 20 years from now, people are wondering whether Mike Moustakas is going to be out at the ballpark to sign autographs because of the great career he had or what have you. I think that's kind of the hope.
I would argue, and I'll run this by both of you guys, and Brett, of course, you remember those Royals teams.
Absolutely.
That rivalry between the Yankees and the Royals in 76, 77, 78, and 80, the 4 times they met in the ALCS, that might have been a bit more intense than what they were doing with the Red Sox at the time, definitely, and would rival the more recent rivalry with the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Well, we'll let Robert go, and then you
Yeah.
and I will discuss that. Robert?
All right.
Well, that was Robert Ford. I believe he's about 90 minutes away from game time as the Royals are entertaining the Seattle Mariners. But to answer your question, I think definitely yes, because as a kid, it was just terrific watching those teams get it on the field, and more importantly, those ALCS were best of 5, not best of 7.
Absolutely, but also they were pretty rough too. I still remember Brett sliding into nettles. I remember
Yes.
brawls that ensued. I remember a lot of back and forth going on between the two teams just
There's
from
a
the
lot of
benches.
jawing. Absolutely.
Well, I'll also tell you something else. When he mentions Paul Splittorff, okay,
a
when
name I hadn't heard in a
Splittorff
while.
started against the Yankees, you penciled in the loss.
True.
When Gura started against the Yankees, you penciled in the loss.
true.
Dennis Leonard, you had slightly better chances with. But those two guys, those two lefties, were Yankee killers.
Yes, indeed. Those series were phenomenal. In 1980, the Royals obviously got the best of the Yankees, but 76, 77, and 78, terrific. They were great series, and you know what? I mean, that's almost a show. One day, perhaps, we'll do, let's say, all retro show. Just we'll talk about all that sort of stuff.
I'll tell you something. Mariano Rivera, okay, you can think of lots of hitters who have gotten hits off him. He's blown a save or two in his career, okay, but can you think of any one hitter that owns Mariano Rivera or ever did? And the answer is no.
Absolutely.
However,
There was a
Goose
guy named
Gossage
Mr.
and
Brett.
George Brett.
Absolutely.
The
Very
Pine Tar game, that home run was off Gossage, and Brett tattooed Gossage in the 1980 NLCS.
Correct. Yeah, those were some classic series. But what we have to do right now, we have to take a break. It's Jackie Robinson Day. We've got plenty of baseball to talk, and we're also going to introduce a new segment towards the end of the show. It's called Mank on the Spot. We'll talk about that after the break. You're watching The Warning Track.
Live on Sportce.com. I'm Peter Schwartz, and we're joined by one of the current.
If you want everything sports, you got to tune in to Schwartz on Sports. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., Peter Schwartz, the esteemed broadcaster, takes on everything sports. He's got everything from high-end pro sports like the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball to alternative sports like extreme games, lacrosse, tennis, golf, and everything in between.
Joined by Minnesota Vikings Hall of Famer John Randall. Last year, you were inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that is the biggest honor that a player can get bestowed on him. What was that feeling like when you were enshrined in that candidate?
It was unbelievable.
You got to check out Schwartz on Sports because there's nothing you know that he doesn't. He knows everything sports. So check it out, 8 p.m. on Sports.com, Tuesdays.
They should have that line from Spaceballs.
Welcome
introduced.
back to The Warning Track. Alongside of Matt Mankiewicz, I am merely Brett Quintine.
Not just merely.
A lot to talk about. The Yankees are playing well. We already talked about the Royals playing well. The Mets and Red Sox are stumbling. Whole lot of stuff going on this weekend.
Well, the one thing that got headlines earlier this week with the Mets is that probably for the first time in at least 3 years, or some people say almost 10, the Bobby Valentine era, a Met manager finally went off, finally said, it's time to talk to these guys, it's time to light a fire under them, it is time to stop this. And this, I'm talking about this losing streak that they're on. Of course, they proceeded to lose 2 more games after that, but I think it's refreshing if you're a Met fan to have a manager that is, not too mellow. One of the things I think that Jerry Manuel had working against him is that while very even-keeled under adversity, sometimes you need to shake that keel up a little bit. And I
Absolutely.
don't think, at least visibly, he did enough of that. Terry Collins is not like that. Terry Collins wants to stop these problems in April if he possibly can. The problems, on the other hand, are not necessarily something you can have a manager, change overnight.
Sure.
You can't fix the bullpen overnight. You can't get 4 rookies like the Royals have and give up only 1 run in 10 games, or 11 actually they've played. You can't have that when you're the New York Mets and your bullpen is struggling, when your starting pitching is not getting deep into games, when the hitting is just enough if your pitching's good, but nowhere near enough when it's bad. And there are a lot of things that I think will settle themselves over time, but now they move on to Atlanta. They have a 3-game series there, and they better get it going soon.
Yeah, I just don't see them having a good year. I really think that this is going to be a team that's going to be a flop until they figure out what they're doing with Reyes, how effective Santana will be when he comes back. I think this is, and I don't like to use the words rebuilding year, this is more of a cleanup year. It's Terry Collins' first year as a skipper here in New York. I think it's a situation where they just have to figure out what direction they're going, and the play on the field will sort of dictate that direction. Next year, this time, I think there'll be a little bit more optimism, but for now, I don't really even see a 500 ball club. And as far as another club that is sub 500, the Boston Red Sox, 2 up and 9 down. I can't explain it. They just signed Adrian Gonzalez for 7 years, $154 million. Good for him. I'm a fan of Adrian Gonzalez. They have the pieces. Carl Crawford obviously not really getting the job done. I think their pitching hasn't been what they expected, but obviously 11 games does not make a season. But I think we're both very surprised that they've been this slow to get out of the gate.
Well, usually when teams get like that, 2-9, 2-8, we see it time and time again. The '98 Yankees, as I said on this show before, started out 1-5. So slow starts aren't necessarily too alarming. And you got a good outing out of Josh Beckett for your second win. You took those 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. So there's definitely some life in this team. But on the other hand, you don't want to dig yourself too big a hole. The Yankees have done this before themselves. I mean, we saw them go 11-19 in 05, 21-29 in 07,
Sure.
and made the postseason both years. So it's quite possible. So when you see these statistical analyses, no 1-7 team ever made the World Series, forget it, okay? Teams go 1-7. Good teams go 1-7. They lose 7 out of the 8 over the course of a 162-game season. The only thing this does, though, is that it reduces your margin for error. If you lose 9 out of 11 somewhere in August, it could really hurt you. That's where you really start to suffer a little bit. However, I don't necessarily see the Red Sox fading out. They're just too talented. There's just too much heart on this team, and they will be there when they need to be. There's no cause for alarm just yet. There are some short-term fixes they may have to make, no question about it. But I don't necessarily see massive adjustments. Of course, they're not going to be major trade deadline deals. They're not going to be sellers. They might be buyers. But patience is a virtue right now. And that's what you really have to see. And that's what you really have to live with right now when you're a Red Sox fan. You know what? The Yankees, they're 7-4 right now. They were off to a really good start. But Yankee fans were screaming their lungs out this past weekend. You just dropped 2 out of 3 to the Red Sox. Well, that Red Sox team came in 1-7.
Right.
Okay. Law of averages, a team on a losing streak, you don't want to face them because the losing streak has to end somewhere, and you don't want it to be you. Well, guess what? The Yankees, it was them.
347-480-1724 is the number to call. Join us on the warning track. We're just talking about the Yankees. Let's talk about them a little bit more. I'll say one positive and one negative. If you got to watch the most recent Yankees victory, I enjoy watching Nick Swisher play baseball. He just has a lot of fun. It was merely a sacrifice fly that won the ball game against Baltimore on Thursday night. But you know what? It was a big sacrifice fly, and they did the whole pie in the face, and Nick Swisher is walking on air. You would have thought he had a walk-off grand slam, and that's great to see.
A very good point, because I was at that game last night, did get a chance to talk to Swisher, and Swisher was elated over the fact that he did exactly what he set out to do. He said he wanted to get a ball to put in the air. He didn't want to hit a home run. He just wanted to get that run in from third base. And he felt that he had plenty of opportunities to do that in the first 10 games of the season and really didn't get it done. So as a hitter, this is exactly what makes you happy. Not necessarily getting hold of one or running into one, as we've often said with some hitters, but going in there with a mission and then completing that mission, where you got to get a ball through the right side, you got to move a runner over, you got to lay a bunt down. You go in with the mission, you complete the mission. That's actually more important in some cases than doing beyond it. You know,
Absolutely.
Getting a triple instead of a double. Great, it's gravy. But when you look for the pitch you want to hit and you hit the pitch you want to hit, that is really a mission accomplished.
On a down note for the Yankees, Phil Hughes, he is heading to the disabled list. 3 starts, a 13.94 ERA. He's going to the DL because of a dead arm. Well, hopefully he can rebound, and after 2 weeks, let's hope his arm is rested. Hopefully he'll get right back into the starting rotation. Otherwise, I think he's in jeopardy of being a member of the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons, and that's AAA, Mank.
That scares me. And not just Scranton. Scranton's not the problem here. When I hear dead arm, the word dead arm, the two words dead arm, usually are used to describe somebody coming off of Tommy John surgery or somebody prior to going into Tommy John surgery. Okay? I'm not saying I don't have any information on the status of Phil Hughes' arm. I have not seen x-rays. I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. But the bottom line is, this is now cause for alarm. They were downplaying it his first 3 starts. He was downplaying it last night. Russell Martin was saying, the first couple of innings it looked like the Phil Hughes of old. Looked great. And then the next day, he's on the DL. I'm scared as a Yankee fan.
It's certainly not what you wanted to see. The good thing is the Yankees have some pitching depth. Bartolo Colon is going to, hopefully he'll step right up. We'll see what he can do if he's counted on every 5th day. But yeah, you certainly don't like to see anybody going to the DL with the dead arm issue because, as Mank says, yeah, it's kind of an unknown, an X factor. Who knows what that will bring? Is he done after 2 weeks? Does he come back with a vengeance? It's just one of those things. It's not like it's a stress fracture or anything. It's nothing you can really pinpoint. So very simply for Phil Hughes, for the Yankees, for everybody involved, it's a wait and see factor. But in the meantime, the Yankees will have a set against the Texas Rangers. And I don't like to call anybody a bonehead, but Josh Hamilton didn't do something very bright. And unfortunately, he's paying the price for it for the next 2 months.
Yes, and Josh Hamilton, well, he's done a lot of things that weren't too bright,
Yes.
but this is not related to those, thank God.
And what we will say, actually, since we are running out of time, I mentioned that we would have a Mank on the spot segment. We'll have to do a little bit quicker this time. Very simply, Mank, does A-Rod break Barry Bonds' record, yes or no? A-Rod
Yes.
has 617, Bonds 762.
I say yes because if he stays healthy, he can do it. And he doesn't have to have 70 home run seasons to do it. He just has to hang around long enough.
I certainly agree. I think that A-Rod is, and that's the key, staying healthy. He's 36 years of age, 4 seasons at 35 home runs, which certainly is not undoable, unreachable, however we'd like to phrase it. I think he actually breaks Barry Bonds' record comfortably.
Hank Aaron hit 40 home runs at the age of 39, and that put him within 1 of Ruth. And he only had to hit 2 more the following season to break it. So and that was, I believe, his 2nd highest total of his career.
Right. He wasn't a guy who hit a ton each year.
He never hit more than 47.
30s, correct.
Never hit more than 47, never hit 50, but he was consistent. And he never hit fewer than 24 outside of his rookie year leading up to 715. Of course, he tapered off the last couple of years of his career, but he was always consistent and always there. And that's really what gives you these records. These long-term records have a lot to do, yes, with some great years, but you have to do it year in, year out, nonstop. And that's one of the reasons why the steroid era is going to be remembered for what it is, because it wasn't necessarily the ability to hit a ball farther or hit a ball at all. It was the ability to do it every day.
Absolutely, I fully agree. Yeah, I definitely think that he certainly will break the record in 4 years or so. And he's a guy also, because he plays in the American League, he won't have to be at third base day in and day out in the next 4 years. He still plays a fantastic third base, but that's what the AL is for, having a DH.
Yes, and you can spell him for a couple of days here and there. The only trouble the Yankees have right now is that as the team gets older, they may have a little bit of a logjam at DH.
True.
DH
Yes.
traditionally for the Yankees has been that type of spot. You have a full-time guy there, you sit him, and yeah, Jeter has DH'd a few games. You want to rest a guy, keep his bat in the lineup, that's how you do it. Can't do that in the National League, which is why Carlos Beltran has been such an issue. You want to keep his bat in the lineup, but you got to put him out in the field.
And that will wrap up another segment of the warning track. He and I agree. There'll be some times where I put him on the spot and we won't agree. But in this instance, we both believe that A-Rod will be the all-time home run leader when he retires, whenever that may be. We'll see you guys next Friday, and we hope to have yet another special guest, whether it's via Skype, via the telephone, or who knows, maybe in person. We've got room for a third person here.
Maybe it's you.
Good night, everybody. Take care.